Hello and welcome to TandL Talks, the podcast for, about, and featuring fabulous educators. I'm your host, Nancy, and today I get to welcome someone very special into the TandL Clubhouse, my friend and longtime colleague, Dr. Glenn Malone. If you've spent any time in Washington's education world, you've probably felt Glenn's influence, whether you knew it or not. He is a seasoned educator, a mentor to countless leaders, and a champion for teachers who feel that tug toward leadership. With more than 40 years serving students, schools, and future administrators, Glenn now leads administrator preparation at City University, and he does it with heart. In our conversation, we unpack the myths of school leadership, the dispositions that really matter, how teachers can build authentic leadership experiences, and why the principalship remains one of the most challenging and the most joy-filled roles in our system. This conversation is full of sincerity, wisdom, and heart. Let's get started. Hello, TandLers. Today I am welcoming Dr. Glenn Malone to the TandL Clubhouse. Welcome, Glenn.
Hello, welcome to you as well. Thank you for inviting me.
I'm so glad you're here. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, most important is I'm a grandfather of 5, and I start that way because family's most important to me. But I have been a public educator for over 40 years, 4 decades in public schools, and then a lot of work for the last 18 years in higher education and promoting teachers that want to become leaders at the next level.
Awesome.
So, principal certifications, superintendent certifications, and I work for CityU.
Great. So I always like to start the podcast by asking you to tell me just about a teacher who had a big influence on you.
Wow. So for me, I was a reluctant learner in school myself, and I was a probably dyslexic reader. So I struggled with reading, and math was good, but so I was a challenge for teachers. And because of that, it was hard for me to identify a teacher that would connect with me. And also I was one of the kids that was a transient kid, that was kind of the chubby kid in class. So I was the new chubby kid that was there for a year and then gone. So that transiency led to me not really connecting. So one memory I have of a teacher in 4th grade, her name was Mrs. Kimes, is that when I left, because I left every year, I left a little bit before the end of the year, she was the first one that gave me a card the class had made with every kid signing it saying, "So long." That was the first time I felt like I was a part of that. And that part really sticks with me even to this day. You can kind of tell it's an emotional part of who I am as a leader in trying to include folks. Everyone should feel like that.
Right.
And I'd never felt that way before and never did again after, until we were more stable and staying in the same place where I started to be able to build relationships with others. So I would say Mrs. Kimes, but Mrs. Kimes is probably no longer with us.
Right.
And we never had a relationship after I left, because this was way before anything but letters were used to communicate, and she didn't know where I went. And I'm hoping maybe she wondered whatever happened to little Glenn. But yeah, Mrs. Kimes was one that had the most impact on me as far as who I am today, as far as someone that cares about everyone.
Let's talk a little bit about your current role in the work that you do, the really helping teachers transition into principalship, if that's what they're wanting to do.
Yeah, so I am the senior program director for City University of Seattle, and we provide certifications for principal certification, program administration certification. Candace McGregor is one of our graduates, and superintendent certification, and also CTE administration certification. So of the certifications, CityU is the third largest certifier of principals in the state of Washington right now. And that's probably our most common. But other pathways include like Candace, the program administration certification. The CTE administration certification is one that's relatively new we were the first provider for CTE administration, but it's been a requirement for CTE directors to have that certification for quite some time, but it hasn't been enforced. So we're starting to see a trend where we have more CTE teachers that want to become CTE administrators and need the certification as well. Superintendent certification is also a smaller part of what we do. And then we have a doctorate program as well. Right now, I am the director of all of those programs and connect with the doctoral program as well.
So when you think about strong school leaders, what qualities matter more than people usually expect?
Yeah, so you know the answer to this because we did it for so long and still support that work. It's the dispositions that really make or break someone. So by that, I would mean, I think it's your approach and your attitude about how you approach the work, and the relational pieces are so critical to your success. And my long-term success is built in as the relational piece is the part that's the foundation of that for me. So a lot of times when I interview candidates, they'll feel like, well, I don't know enough about budget, or I don't know enough about maybe even instruction, or I don't know enough about this, or these elements are what you find and what you know, Nancy, is that the part that we can't really change as much are your dispositions. And so you really have to reflect on your dispositions as a person and as a teacher on whether or not you have the dispositions that would be required for someone that is going to inherit problems that weren't of your own making, and you're going to be the one to ask to solve these problems that your team was a part of, but they weren't necessarily things that you created as a problem to solve. And so that requires a certain disposition in solving that in a way that would have a long-term positive outcome. So I think dispositional, thinking about who you are as a person and what you value most, is really, really underlooked sometimes for the job. And it is what trips up some of our friends and colleagues that are struggling in the position.
Right. Absolutely. So are there any common myths that you can think of that teachers have about becoming a principal or a school leader?
Yeah, I've seen, and it's not really changed from the beginning. When you first think about whether or not you want to be a principal, think you might think that your days are going to be focused on instruction.
That's adorable, right?
And they will be,
Yes.
and there will be days, but it's not, if that's like, I really want to be a principal because I'm really want to be focused on instruction, that's a fantastic candidate, but it's not the reality of what's going to happen. And so that myth that you're all of a sudden the instructional leader, and so therefore I'm going to spend my days working on instruction, is just not reality. And so that myth is sometimes the reason why some people go into it. And then when the reality hits that, okay, today I'm showing up and there's a parent and a kid sitting here at 7:00 waiting to talk to me about something that's probably going to consume most of this day and maybe next day as well, depending on what the issue is. And usually that issue has nothing to do with instruction.
Right. Right. So how can a teacher tell if they're really ready to pursue leadership and not just curious about it?
Yeah, so if your motivation is financial, it is true that the principal salaries are starting to advance, in that there was a time where the teacher's salary was pretty similar to a principal's salary as far as their per diem. And so then the thing that teachers, I think, that want to be principals don't necessarily think about as much as they should is that move from a 180-day contract to a 260-day contract. And so think of terms of what your per diem might be When I first started as a principal in Ording School District back in 1980, whatever it was, or maybe it was 91, if it was late 80s, maybe 90s, early 90s. There were several teachers on the staff that made more money than me per diem by far. I was probably the 10th on the list. And so that notion of also leaving the school at 4:00 if you wanted to, even though teachers, sometimes a lot of teachers stay longer than that, but they don't have to. That's different too. So having a day become an evening, become a weekend is not foreign to teachers, but the difference between a teacher and a principal is that a principal doesn't have a choice not to do it, whereas a teacher could probably choose not to work that weekend or work that evening unless it was mandatory.
Right.
So that mindset of just the time commitment alone is probably the one thing I think might surprise most folks, as they are usually on a contract that would require them to work through the spring break, would require them to work through the Christmas break, unless they had a vacation day that they were going to take. And that's going to be different for a teacher that's been teaching for a while. Yeah, just thinking about that in particular. And then, like I said a little bit earlier, the notion of inheriting problems that you didn't cause, now you're responsible for helping to solve, and being that kind of a person for people that are struggling with their teacher, or for a teacher that's struggling with a student, or whatever it might be. Those have got to be fun things for you to do. Like, you have to enjoy being a problem solver in that way. And then the other piece would be being able to enjoy the work in a way that you'd feel good about coming to work the next day, and making it a place where you'd want your kids to attend as well. So, yeah, I don't know if that answers your question as much, but yeah, those are the things that I think sometimes aren't talked about as much when a person is kind of thinking about moving into an administrative position of some sort. And also to think there are other jobs, although some of them are being cut today in today's education schools, but there are other jobs that are leadership jobs.
Correct.
That just because you want to be a leader doesn't mean you have to be a principal. And there's other positions that need to be filled that help support teachers. But that being said, my experience was the principal job was the best job in the world.
Such a good job.
I know you enjoyed it when you were there. When you and I worked together, we had fun.
When you talk about that time commitment, when I was an intern, someone told me, your typical hours are going to be 7 a.m. to 5 p.m., but oftentimes you'll go outside of those hours. And I remember being a little shocked by that, because that's a 10-hour day. And what a gift that was that somebody said that out loud to me, right? Plan on 7 to 5, but just know you'll go outside those hours too. And it's true.
It is very true.
As a leader, you often work more than 10 hours a day.
And there will be a day where you'll be able to leave.
Yes.
When you were expected to leave, there'll be a day when you have to leave early to go to your kid's basketball game, and you can make that work sometimes. But there are more frequent times where you need to stick around to find that lost kid that sometimes doesn't show up until 7:00.
Yep, absolutely. So you started to touch on this, but how can teachers get authentic leadership experiences while they're still in the classroom before they even apply for a program?
Yeah, so if you're thinking about being principal in particular, let's just say that, you shouldn't wait now. No one's going to come in and say, hey, why don't you try this? Why don't you do this? You might have a principal that taps you on the shoulder and says, this would be great work for you, but you really have to take your own learning in your own hands. You have to take control of it. So what I tell folks is, right now, you need to start building your experiences in areas that you might not know much about. So if you're really good at SEL, and you're the SEL coach, and you're doing the SEL lessons, and you're doing PD on SEL, then you might want to look for some other elements of the work that would help make you a better, more viable candidate for the position that you might be seeking. So you can do that by leading other, your safety committee, being the lead of your team, being a leader in any respect of the work, and volunteering for things at the district level as well, especially if you're in a big district like Puyallup. There's lots of opportunities for you to call someone and say, hey, I'm thinking about getting more involved in this. When's your next meeting? I see you've got the agenda here. Trying to do things that would be more than just attending the meeting and enjoying the punch and cookies, and moving to the next level where you'd be actually helping to lead. And those are gonna bode well for your advancement into the principal pool for selection. There's usually, for any large district position, those numbers are going to grow. You could have up to 80 people apply for one position.
Wow.
And that's going to be a number I think we're going to see more of here recently with some of the cuts that are happening across the state, where those numbers will be anywhere from 30, 40 to 80 in larger districts.
Right.
And what you do now can set you apart from the other 79 in that stack.
Right.
And those things are things like simple things like just being a building leader, helping your principal, saying, I would like to get more involved with this. It's going to require more hours on your part to do that. But if this is really a desire, it'll be hours that will kind of match the real work of a principal when you get there too. So you kind of get used to that and saying, well, I don't know if my family's ready for me to commit to this amount of hours.
You see those teachers and you think, oh, that person's ready. Those teachers who are like, hey, can I lead part of the professional learning on that day? Or can I do this? That are coming to you as a principal or as a director saying, hey, what about this? Could I try this? And it's fun to watch their trajectory from somebody who starts saying, I want to try this new thing, to then they become building leaders. And it's just so cool to see.
It is fun to watch. And you and I have been doing this long enough to where we've seen people that we've hired now be principals and superintendents and district leaders. And it's kind of fun to see because we knew it back then that they were going to be fantastic at it. So it is fun work. And like I said before, the principal job in particular is the one I've found the most enjoyable.
Yes. I love my current job, but I miss being a principal. I miss having, first of all, my team of teachers and that common direction that we're all heading towards. And then, of course, the kid part.
Yes.
I love those kids who are in crisis. Those are my faves.
Well, I'll just even define the niche a little bit more. The elementary principal job was a great gig.
Right. Such a good job. Yep. And a really hard job.
It is.
Sure.
So you and I have talked about this before. The principal job is the hardest job, I think, in our system. The district office folks' jobs, I don't find them to be harder than the principal job. They're more hours, but they're not harder. The harder job. The teacher job is a pretty hard one too.
Yes.
And those two in particular are kind of the crux of our success in our program. So all the rest of us, you and your role, are all about supporting teachers and principals in their success. And so that's another cool thing about this move from teacher to principal. I've found that in my 40 years is that the teacher, the principal, and the superintendent, all jobs that I've done myself, those are the three kind of points in our system where you can really make a big difference, and the others are helping others make a big difference.
Right. I like how you framed that. That says it exactly right. You talked a little bit about this too, but how important is conflict navigation and difficult conversations? And how can teachers practice their skills in those areas?
Wow, it happens. That's a big part of the role of a leader, whether you're a principal or a program administrator or a CT administrator or a superintendent. Having those conversations that are tough ones you could have practice in that right now with your team. I volunteer in schools a lot, and I hear some of the normal conflicts that happen within teams, and they're not unusual. They recur regularly. And I think the person that's going to be the most prepared for a principal would be someone that would be willing to kind of lead their own team, whether it be a kindergarten team or a junior high department team, lead their team to some better results. And so that can happen. If you want to be a leader, you should consider how I'm going to lead our team through this conflict that we're experiencing right now, whether we are trying to agree on how we're going to implement the curriculum or whether we're going to agree on how we're going to even implement something that the district office has said we need to do, or how we're going to agree to meet in conversations we're going to have. Those leadership skills are the ones that transfer into the types of behaviors you need to have as a principal supporting teams.
Right.
So I'd say doing that with your current team, and also the conflicts that you'd have with parents. Not necessarily relying completely on your principal to solve your problems with parents, but trying to reach out and have communications and improve your own communication with the parents that you do. And if you're not doing that currently, those would be good things for you to practice, and maybe ask colleagues that you think do it well, how have they done a better job? Talk to some of the parents are going to be really difficult to work with. And if they're difficult as a teacher, those are the ones you're going to work with most frequently as the principal.
Yes.
So those are how you develop relationships with your teams, or with, as an elementary person in particular. I used to say this to my secondary colleagues. You could have a parent from 3 years old to 12 years old.
Yes.
That's a long time.
And if there are younger siblings, you have them even
too.
longer.
Yes.
Correct.
And so you don't really have the leisure to say, I just have you for a year and I can endure this for 9 months, and then you're on to the next person. You have to have relationships with people that could last for a long time.
Right.
A long time with siblings, as you said. So it's not an option to just endure it until they're gone in a couple of months. And that's different from a teacher's perspective. And a teacher, usually they could say, the parent might say, I don't want that teacher again. Or the teacher can say, I'm not going to, that family and I didn't get along really well, so let's move on. As a principal, you do not have that. So you have to figure out how to make it work.
And oftentimes those relationships, and for me, ended up being some of my favorites, right? Like K1, parents unhappy, you work through whatever the issue is, and then you just continue to build that relationship. And by the time they leave, they're on your side, right?
Yes.
And you're kind of sad to see them go.
And you didn't know it at the time.
Right.
In fact, sometimes you might just be finding it out now.
Yes.
When they reach out to you on Facebook and say,
right.
That time was a tough time for me, and you were there for me, and we appreciated that. And sometimes they even say, sorry about how it was for you back then, but here's what we were going through. Yeah.
Yes.
Having some grace goes a long way. Having some empathy goes a long way. Putting yourself in the other person's shoes and understanding the situations that everybody's in. They come with all different needs. And so, yeah, that is true. That part will come back in full. Now, I still do have a couple of names that make me cringe when I hear them, even though it's been 30 years. It's
Agreed.
Like, we never really hit it off. But I attribute that to, some people have mental illness. Some people have other reasons.
Or
life circumstances at that time.
Yeah.
And then, my decisions may have not been the best at that time too.
Right.
So, but I found, for the most part, that the relationships, when you look at a school of typically 500 kids, maybe it's 600, 800. I had a school of 1,000 at once. I could say that the majority, by far, were positive experiences.
Yes.
And there's a handful that maybe didn't work out.
Agreed.
Great.
Yeah. But some of those great relationships were hard-earned.
They were.
Right? And you have to be ready for them.
Very true.
What parts of school leadership tend to surprise new administrators the most?
So I think it's in your classroom, if you're coming from a teacher's perspective, your lesson plans are probably going to get taught every day. You're probably going to do reading tomorrow. And you probably are going to do it in the way you plan to do it.
At about the time you
think you're going to do it. Yep. So and recess is going to happen at that time. And lunch is going to happen at that time. Not so with a principal.
Right.
So that's the biggest surprise, is that I don't have control of my schedule any longer. I don't know when I might eat lunch. I don't know when I might go to the bathroom, which is a common teacher problem too.
Yes.
That's actually harder. You can go to the bathroom a little bit easier as a principal than you can as a teacher, but I don't know what might consume my day or my week, depending on the issue that might occur.
Right.
Or my evening. And so that's probably the biggest surprise for folks, is that I thought I was going to be doing instruction, and all of a sudden I'm solving a conflict at the bus stop, and there's an allegation of harassment of some sort that I definitely need to follow up on. And I need to include district office on this one because it might involve litigation. Those things don't happen as often, but there were times for you when you showed up to work and you were thinking this is going to be the day we get this thing done.
Exactly.
And all of a sudden there's this thing that's there and it's not going to go away. And avoiding that thing that's there that needs to get done is a bad idea.
Makes it 10 times worse.
So I think that's the biggest surprise for folks is that, okay, I lost control. Now, when you come back down to district office, you do have, like program administration, you do have those controls back. So you can kind of control your schedule more in a program administration role than you can as a principal.
Right.
And that's sometimes the reason why someone might pick that role. Now, to get those roles, program administration roles, I always advocate for teachers to think about the principal role because I think there are many good people that are doing the program administration without the principal experience. But if they had the principal experience, they will have a much easier road to earning the respect of the principals that they support. Unfortunately, principals do want their leaders to be principals.
Yep.
And if you have that in your pocket, then you will have more success and acceptance from the teams you serve. But you can win them over without that if you do a great job of understanding the role of the principal in particular.
Yeah. I started my career as a special ed administrator and then became crazy. You remember this. I was a half-time principal, half-time special ed administrator. That was nuts. But the day I became a principal, I became a better special ed administrator. The context of being a principal just put so many things in a different perspective for me. I'm so thankful I had the experiences as a principal.
Well, and I was one of your colleagues at that time.
Right.
And I think your colleagues also embraced you to a much different
For sure.
degree because of your doing that was like, you go.
Yep.
That's exactly what we wanted to see out of somebody doing that work.
Yeah.
And that will make a difference too. Now, can you do it without that? Yes. But I certainly recommend someone make a conscious effort to consider principal cert is really the gold standard of the certificates we have. And it is the one that will open the most doors for you.
Yes. Yes. And it just gives you such a good perspective.
Yep.
Yeah. Agreed. So if a teacher wants to be a strong candidate, they're considering applying for an admin program, what should they start doing right now to make their application strong?
Yeah, so the state requires 540 hours of internship. And a lot of times new candidates will come in and say, can I start counting my hours now? And what I tell them is all hours count towards you getting a job. Not all hours count towards you getting the certificate. And when you get a certificate for principal cert, it's not, in fact, I'm not sure if I even see yours on the wall in here. I don't.
No.
It's not a certificate like that.
Right.
It's a job. You're going for the job. And so everyone could get the certificate, do the hours, do the coursework. But you're really moving in your profession from teacher to a new job. And to do that requires you to start doing that now. Start to make the mind shift from thinking like a teacher to thinking like a principal. And this might offend some of your listeners, and hopefully not, because I know most of your listeners are teachers, but there's a different mindset about teacher thinking and principal thinking. And sometimes, like for instance, I was a union person when I was a teacher. I was a union rep. I was a negotiator. I'm all for that. But there's a different type of thinking from union teacher thinking than there is from principal thinking. And thinking about the system in terms of the best work conditions for teachers versus a principal would think about the best thing for kids and students. And that difference and starting to move towards that type of thinking and experiencing things in a way that would broaden your scope of the work that we do to serve teachers as they better serve kids.
Right.
So volunteering, asking Nancy Strobel at district office, what kind of things do you have for me? Because I know that if someone knocked on your door today and said, I'm thinking about wanting to be a principal. Do you have any extra work that you could give me to be?
Yes, I do. Officially, yes, I do.
And I did the same thing when I was in
Yes.
that role, where you just need to take control of your own learning and not wait for just the certificate to come.
Right.
Because just the certificate coming is not going to be good enough. Even though it's 540 hours, most of our candidates get hired immediately have at least 1,000.
Right.
And they're hours that are focused on all 7 of the standards
Right.
that we use to prepare someone for a principalship.
Yeah. Yeah, those hours I think feel really daunting on the front end of it. And then once you get started, it's like, oh, that's nothing.
It is.
So easy to get those hours.
It is.
Yeah.
Yep. And then the hours on things that you need to know more about.
Right.
So because we're preparing you for the 7 standards that all preparation programs are required to prepare you for.
Right.
That's all elements of the job, not just the instructional piece.
Right.
Which a lot of times that's what people are best at when they start.
Yep. Are there experiences or artifacts that make an application stand out when someone applies to a program?
Yeah, all programs do collect artifacts as you work towards your certification. And the ones that stand out are the ones you should be thinking about, the projects that you're going to be most proud of that have like the best results, like
Right.
that are going to endure. So if you were an intern, I used to tell my interns when I was principal, let's do something that's going to be like here 10 years from now. That's something that, so can I just do a shout out? Jerry Pearson, if you remember Jerry.
Yes.
So when I told her that, I said, Jerry, and her name's not Pearson now. I can't remember what her name is currently. But anyway, Jerry was a kindergarten teacher, intern. She said, I want to do something really big. So I said, you know what we've been struggling with as a district is the kindergarten supply list.
Yes.
Some uniformity. So she did one even better. She worked all year on creating the current district supply list that is still in place for every school, all grades. That was a Jerry intern project.
Thank you, Jerry.
And what it did was it made it fair for everyone.
Right.
We got rid of some stuff that some people really wanted on there.
Right.
We added some things that weren't there. We found out probably should be there. So it's been tweaked over the years, but that notion of having that kind of an impact was a project that was fantastic for her, but it also really, really benefited the entire system.
Right.
For years. To this day.
Yeah.
An internship project, another one, I'll give you an example. So there was a principal that we had in Puyallup. Her name was Connie Miller.
Yes.
Connie and she passed away from leukemia, and she was a good friend. She had called me because she'd heard of my name. That's how we met. She called me because I did my internship 1 or 2 years before her in Bethel School District. And one of the intern projects I did was I coordinated the dedication ceremony for a brand new school and the opening of a brand new school. And she had heard it was fantastic. And so she called me and said, hi, Glenn, I'm Connie. I'm doing my internship at Brulette, and I want to pick your brain about this particular project that I have, which was a dedication ceremony. And I said, great. It was like right when Brulette opened. And so I said, great, love to talk to her. So I shared everything with her. So fast forward to, I'm now the principal at Maplewood, which was many years later, and we're doing a rededication ceremony. And they get out the folder that Connie had created as an intern, hand it to me and say, here's all the protocols we follow for dedications. And by golly, it was everything I had given her. And so that was a project that Connie had done that endured, and that I was fortunate enough to see the fruits of that work for many years later. And still, I believe if you were to go to do a dedication today, I believe that some of that is still in place in Puyallup.
That's fabulous.
Yep.
I love that full circle moment, right?
It is. Yep. She would be laughing today to hear that we're even talking about it.
Yeah. She was a lovely, smart person.
She was fantastic.
Yeah.
And her kids are still doing great things.
Excellent. How important is it for somebody who's doing an internship to find a mentor? How do they find the right mentor?
Yeah, so sometimes it won't be as easy as what you just said. So
Right.
you don't usually just go find your mentor.
Right.
It's usually the person that's the principal in the building you're at. Now, I have worked with teachers that were beginning their internship and they just did not respect their current leader and they wanted to do their internship somewhere else and they had to transfer buildings.
Yep.
Now, what happens in some cases, especially if you transfer districts, they're going to make you wait a year before they approve your internship. It has to be approved by the district.
Right.
So, what I tell folks is you can learn a lot from all current principals. You can learn things that you might not want to do, and you can learn things that you probably should do, or you can learn great things too. You don't have to put yourself in the box where I'm going to have this person that I don't respect be my mentor, and so I'm going to have to try to make the best of it. If you're a good leader at the core, you're going to figure out how to make that work.
Right.
So you don't really get to pick your mentor when it comes to a principalship, internship. However, you can choose where you work, but sometimes that doesn't go well either because principals could get reassigned, and so your best laid plan could fall apart. So I encourage people to make the best of where they're at,
Wherever they're at,
and to get to know the person that they work with, because assuming positive intent, that person wants to do a good job, even though you might not respect them. And there's a lot that you can learn from. They got hired into that job. So
yes,
there's a lot that you can learn, and you'll probably see a different side of them when you work more closely with them as their intern. The one thing is, I always tell folks that when you're the intern, your loyalty needs to lie with the principal.
Absolutely.
And you're making this shift from teacher thinking, union thinking, to administrative principal thinking.
Yes.
And you still can, and good principals will really appreciate you being candid and honest with me in my office.
Correct.
And telling me what you think about my stupid decision that I made or how we should have done it differently. But if you're my intern and we walk out the door, you're on my team.
Yes.
And so I've heard what you had to say. I've taken it. We're not doing what you said, but I appreciate it. Or we might change it. But knowing how to navigate that kind of a system is really important for new leaders to figure out, because you could be assigned as an assistant principal in the same situation,
right,
where you don't get a pick usually who's going to be your principal when you're assistant. In fact, sometimes in PUP, you'll get assigned one principal 1 year and maybe work for 2 and like one and not the other, and maybe go to a different building after that. So you have to be the kind of leader that can be resilient even when you're not really on the same page as the current. Now, it'll be more fun,
right,
and that's for sure. But the reality is you don't get to pick your mentor.
right.
Now, you can have mentors that won't necessarily be your official mentor for your program, and you should do that.
Yes.
And so even though I'm in this role here, I'm still going to call Nancy
right.
to say, here's what I'm doing. And Nancy will give you good advice. She will say, okay, you got to let that fly. You got to say less and do more. You got to, you'll still have those kind of mentors, but your formal mentor, you don't really get to pick that usually.
Glenn, if there's somebody out there who's considering going into administration, what advice would you have for them overall? If they're on the fence, they're not really sure, but they think they might too.
Yeah. So that's really, you can call me and have a conversation. I'll be honest and candid with folks. We're large enough to where I'm not desperate for folks. It's important to me to help counsel people in the right direction. So talk to someone that knows you well, and that's doing the work that could give you good advice on that. We occasionally will find someone that hasn't talked to the principal, hasn't talked to their district, and says, I want to be a principal. And what sometimes happens is the principal say, I don't know if that's the job for you.
Right.
If you haven't had a conversation with your principal about this, that'd be the first thing I think is really going to be important for you to say. Here's what I'm thinking. One, you have to have their support. Yet they're usually going to be the gatekeeper for whether that's going to happen or not. And two, they're going to be probably your mentor in the long run if they say yes.
Right.
Even if you're a teacher. So sometimes we'll have teachers that apply that by evaluation, they're not successful teachers.
Right.
That's not usually a good sign for a successful principal. There is probably an occasion where it was unfair evaluation, perhaps, or a conflict. But for the most part, if you're a struggling teacher going to be a principal is not a good idea.
Right.
So that first conversation with someone about the idea that you work with or that's your supervisor or previous supervisor is one that I think I see some people not having that. And then you can actually start many programs before your internship and then find out at internship they're not going to allow you to. So having those conversations early and making sure that everyone's on board and agrees. Now, the other thing, it's a hard job. It is, like we said earlier, it's the hardest job we have. And there's some research. AWSP, the Association of Washington School Principals, has an organization for emerging leaders, principals, people that want to be principals
Mm-hmm.
interns. Look at their website, tap into their resources, explore the idea of getting to know what's going to be required of you as a principal through the AWSP leadership framework and other things that are posted there. And then by doing that, it'll kind of open your eyes a little bit to really what you're signing up for and what you're going to be expected to do. That's the part that I see missing from some folks that apply, where they just haven't had those conversations with folks, real conversations about whether I'm ready now. AWSP is doing some work to find out why there's so much what they call principal churn right now,
Right.
where people thought they wanted to be principals. They got hired to be a principal. They were good at that in those phases, but they just don't enjoy it, or it's taking too much out of them, and they're deciding to go back to teaching. That happens. Many of our friends have done that.
Yes.
And some are currently doing that.
Yes.
And it's not uncommon nationwide. And that principal churn is happening for some of the reasons we described earlier. It's a whole different mindset of how to do the work, where you don't control what you might have to be doing from day to day as much as you do as a teacher.
Right.
And then also when there's a larger system and when your values maybe conflict with some of the direction from others, then that also contributes to folks saying, I think I just want to go back to where I had more control and what matched my values more.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yep.
So that's the kind of conversation I have with folks when they call me, say, hey, tell me about your leadership principal certification and what that might look like for me.
Yeah.
And then I say, okay, maybe you're more program administration certification, or
Right.
if you're a CTE teacher and want to be maybe a CTE administrator, which aren't many of those jobs left, but we've got a program for that as well. Or if you really are advanced and you're already a principal and you're listening to this, we've got the superintendent certification or the doctorate, which are also very different and unique jobs in themselves.
Excellent. And we'll include your contact information in the show notes.
Fantastic.
So for people who are listening, if you want more information from Dr. Malone, you can reach out to him.
Be happy to help, even if you're just thinking about it and just exploring the options.
Fabulous. Well, Glenn, thank you so much for being here. It has been my pleasure. And I just want to formally just thank you because you've been a mentor for me over the years.
Well,
and I appreciate your leadership. So
thank you so much. I was thinking about one of the times where you and I connected that way when you helped with the development of the AWSP leadership framework.
Agreed. Yes, that was a long time ago, wasn't it?
Yes. And you won an award for that, too.
Thank you. Yeah, I forgot about that. All right. Thanks so much.
You bet.
Well, that wraps up today's conversation. And I want to extend a sincere thank you to Glenn for joining us in the TandL Clubhouse. His honesty, wisdom, and deep belief in people is exactly what our profession needs. If today's episode stirred something in you, a curiosity, a question, or maybe a spark, Glenn is a generous resource and would be happy to connect. His contact information is in the show notes. Thank you, TandLers, for listening and for the incredible impact you make every single day. I hope this episode encourages you to step boldly into your own leadership, wherever you may be. Don't forget to follow TandL Talks on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, or Amazon Music. When you follow the show, you'll always know when a new episode drops, and your support helps others discover these conversations too. See you next time on TandL Talks.